Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of No Limits. My name is Scott Morgan, Rock Motor City Mad Mouth. Glad to have Candy Ebley back in the house. Good evening, Candy.
Good evening, Scott.
And across the state off I-75 out in the metropolitan Fort Myers area. Is there such a thing on the west coast of Florida as a metropolitan area when you got Naples and Fort Myers? Steve Balestrieri, fresh from New England, enjoying his first winter time in the South. Good evening, Mr. Balestrieri.
And top of the evening to you, my friend. Yeah, it's a beautiful day to be sitting out by the swimming pool with the Christmas tree over my shoulder. And as all my family and friends back in Massachusetts are in a nor'easter getting 18 inches of snow, I'm sorry, I don't feel bad. I love it here now. It's kind of nice to be sitting by the pool at night, isn't it?
Yeah, I can tell that really breaks your heart, doesn't it, Steve?
It does.
Yeah, it's all written all over your beard, or no, you're having no sympathy up there. Of course, we just had a taste of the Midwest, and thankfully we didn't get hit with too bad of snow, did we, Candy?
No, luckily we didn't. It wasn't too bad.
Well, obviously we're back here on No Limits, what we have, and we are definitely going no limits on this broadcast for sure. We're going to recap some of the top stories in 2020, and I always used to associate 2020 with having good vision, but the vision for this year was anything but 2020. So what I'm going to do under this particular format is I'm going to list off a bunch of things. You guys are going to comment on each one, and I'll probably slide one in every so often, if not all of them. And Steve, let's talk about arguably, I know there are a lot of sports stats. We're not going to get into those tonight, but we're getting into the biggest one probably all year, and that's Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, it was so sad. I mean, I'm not even a basketball fan. I don't follow basketball, but I mean, Kobe Bryant was one of those kind of iconic figures in the sports world. And, to hear about him and his daughter and a couple of other people passing away in that helicopter crash, I thought it was awful at the time. And, it just took until this COVID thing hit. I think that was the biggest sports story of the year, right up until, that pandemic hit. And everyone, I think, was still in a big state of shock over that one.
I think we were all surprised. We woke up one morning and we're like, what? What just happened? Really? No, that can't be true. I mean, he was bigger than the game of basketball. I mean, like you said, if you're not even a fan of the game, you knew who Kobe Bryant was.
Yeah, he was like, one of those, like you said, larger than life figures. And, so it seemed like everything I was reading about him, he had got his life together after basketball. He seemed to be in a good place. He was in a great place with his daughter. Those two are very, very close. And then, you read about them dying on the helicopter together. It's a heartbreaking story. It really is. And your heart goes out to all the people who were on that at the time.
Yeah, you talk about the whole sports world shutting down over such an iconic guy. Kobe Bryant wasn't the guy who shuts down the NBA world. We're talking about the sports world.
Mm-hmm.
If that isn't larger than life, I don't know what is. Yeah, so Kobe Bryant. And, I guess it's only a fitting ending, though, that the Lakers did win a championship in the year that he did pass away. So if there's any consolation, and there is no consolation, the Lakers did win their 17th world champion, tied actually with the Boston Celtics for most NBA championships. So, all right, well, we talked about Kobe Bryant. Let's shift over to the COVID-19. Oh, my goodness, this one is loaded.
I'm here to tell you. I mean, I remember when first hearing about that was going on in China, and you knew it wasn't going to stay there. I mean, you just knew it wasn't going to be remaining in China. It got to the United States, and, it seemed at first like everyone was just panicking over nothing. And then it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it has changed, I think, a lot of the way we do things, and probably ever will. It's been a horrible year in regards to COVID-19 across the world, but especially here in the United States.
They announced the other day that we hit over 300,000 deaths this year in just the United States. I'll never forget, Scott and I were out in Arizona when it really started to blow out of proportion here in the United States, and the NBA started having a couple players test positive, so they wanted to shut that down. We happened to be at a baseball game, and it was actually the last game of the regular spring training because they shut down spring training then after the evening that we were at a Brewers-Dodgers game. I'll never forget them announcing, hey, we're shutting it down. This is it.
I know, and it's, it hasn't come back yet. I mean, other than the NFL, everything's been kind of, I don't know. I mean, I know hockey came back and did their playoffs in a bubble. Basketball did theirs, but it's just not the same. Football's playing their games, but, most of the stadiums are empty.
Mm-hmm.
A few stadiums are letting, I think, 20% of their, fan base in, but it's
home field advantage isn't the same.
No, it definitely isn't. And then I think the other thing in regards to that is all of the people that make a living on the periphery of sports, like at the football, baseball games, the people who sell you hot dogs and, media and
vendors,
they worked at concession stands. All those people are out of a job.
Right.
And, those are the ones that are suffering. And these small businesses all across the country, I saw a lady in LA the other day. She owns a restaurant, and most of her money is made at the outdoor part of her restaurant. And the city shut her down because they said it was unsafe. But yet, right across the parking lot from her restaurant, they set up like 5 or 6 circus tents because a movie crew was going to make a film there, and that was going to be their base camp where they can all eat. And it's like, you're ruining people's livelihoods by making them do the right thing and shutting down, but then there's no reason to any of this. It's just awful. It's been an awful year. I think we can't all wait to see the end of 2020, which is in 15 days?
Yeah, I have a birthday before we get to the end, so let me at least get there. COVID-19, where it's affected me a little bit too, is the inability to travel back to Michigan to be with my ailing mother. It was hard for me to see her at the very end of the line, 5 to 6 days left to go in the program with her, knowing full well that I had to rely on communication through FaceTime, the inability to find hotels up there at that time, restaurants and whatnot. In fact, even when we were up there recently, we had to depend solely on carry out and then going over to the grocery stores and so forth to go ahead and get food. So what are you going to do? I wish I could have spent more than 5-6 days at the end with my mother, but unfortunately the man upstairs had another idea, and that's what it was doing. And I'm not the only one in that situation. How many other individuals, were not allowed to be around loved ones because they were taking extra precautions to stay out of COVID-19's way? In fact, for that matter, my brother had it up in Michigan. You want to talk about the ultimate triple crown for all the wrong reasons. Get this, my brother's got COVID-19 when I'm in Michigan. My mother's dying. My aunt shattered her kneecap, and we're up there. We feel like we're in a foreign territory, making the best of what we have. But again, we have to rely on FaceTime to communicate with her, going there at the last minute, not getting that extra time. But, I guess I'll take that versus the alternative and not seeing her at all. But I'm not alone in that. A lot of people probably could not see their loved ones at the very ends. You talk about funerals being graveside funerals versus the regular conventional ones, virtual. I mean, the beat goes on and on. So COVID-19, Candy alluded to it before when we finally got wind of it out in Arizona, and only for it to turn out to be the big monster that it ultimately has turned out to be, and it's still going to be for quite a while.
Yeah, and it's not, like I said, it doesn't seem to be getting any better. I know there's, the vaccine's out, which is a great thing, and hopefully, there'll be enough to go around to get everyone inoculated twice, and we can only hope that it's going to knock down you know, this disease to where we can get semi back to normal. I don't know if we'll ever get back to normal the way we were used to prior to March, I guess you could say. But it would be nice to get back somewhat.
Well, the vaccine's not bringing back 300,000 people and counting, that's for sure. So,
No.
all right, well, let's take this to another sporting level. The Houston Astros cheating scandal. My goodness.
It was, again, you're talking about a terrible thing in sports. I mean, it came out, there was that whole, beating on the trash can thing. And there was, rumors that they had some kind of a device inside, some of the players' shirts. But the weird thing about it is baseball came down hard on the coaches and managers, but they really didn't come down hard at all on the players. And I thought that was, I don't know. I didn't like the way they came down on the managers. So you're saying they cheated. You're saying they were all in on it, but none of the players are getting punished. I don't buy it.
Well, and let's take it a step further, okay? Alex Cora is back with the Boston Red Sox, and the Detroit Tigers hire A.J. Hinch. So, you talk about banging on trash cans, guys getting traded away, getting thrown at, and you only had a shortened season anyway. So, what is the real effect going to be?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, the pitcher that used to pitch for the Red Sox and went to the Dodgers, right. He got suspended for longer for sticking his tongue out at the Astros than they did for cheating in the World Series.
Talk about Joe Kelly, right?
Yeah, Joe Kelly.
Joe Kelly, okay. Yeah,
he stuck his tongue out at the Astros, and he got more times being suspended than the players who were caught cheating. And, I mean, there's something wrong with that picture, I think.
Oh, Candy.
Yes. I mean, what can I say? You guys said it all. I can't believe that. And their suspension was, 1 year? And the 1 year that they got suspended was an abbreviated year. We didn't have a full slate of all games.
And then the Astros were in the playoffs.
Yeah.
A slap on the wrist called a suspension. Go figure. 2020 at its best or worst, depending on how you break it.
Yeah.
I'll give this subject the amount of attention I think it deserves. We gave it a mention, and that's good enough. All right. There's a mention. All right, let's go to the election, Candy.
Wow. What an election. Record turnout, the most ballots cast here in America. Whether you were for the current president or you were for who is now President-elect Biden. Record turnout. I mean, the country can't be, we have to be happy that everybody stepped up and wanted to have their voice heard, whether you're happy with the results or not. But to know that many people cared enough to vote in an election, whether it was absentee, whether it was going in person, I think that was a big win.
It just goes to show, though, with the results of the election, how far this country's been torn apart. Yeah. Because there's no middle ground here whatsoever. No. It's all one extreme or the other. And the thing that always amazes me, and I used to cover politics for a couple of newspapers up in Massachusetts, was that more people get involved and get all excited for a national election than they do for the local and state elections, which actually has a much bigger impact on their daily lives. And that's one thing that I never understood, is we had this huge turnout, for the national election, and when I used to cover local and state elections, we were lucky to get 10% of the people to come out. And those are the elections that actually, I know everyone likes to think, oh, well, who's ever in the White House is going to wield the power and is going to make the difference. It's actually your local and state officials who have much bigger impact on your daily lives than national people do. But, it just shows right now, our country is as torn apart as we were since the 1860s.
Wow. Well, I mean, I'll tell you this right now. The last time I don't mind admitting this here either. Last time I voted in an election was when Ross Perot was running, and I voted for Ross Perot. So, and I have no problem admitting that either. But I'll tell you what, considering the nature of this election, and for which the manner that the country was in such rough shape, had to come out and do it. No ifs, ands, or buts, no excuses. Had to do it this time, and I'm glad I did. So I guess I'm going to ask you guys a question now that we're on it. Are you satisfied with the result of the election?
That's a loaded question.
Well, of course it is. I don't have it any other way. I mean, answer honestly. If you don't feel comfortable, that's okay.
Well, I mean, do I think there was widespread cheating or whatever? I don't know. I don't really believe that. But there are a lot of questions about some of the way things were handled. And, when there are questions like that, I think they really need to be answered. And I don't think that we're ever going to get any, because it all depends on what side of the aisle you're on.
That's true.
Well, what surprises me is in a day of the technology that we have, that we are still having questions about whether the election, if there's fraud, if there's not. I mean, I go back to years ago. I remember Florida and the hanging Chad, and did somebody really punch that hole out or not, and vote for this person or that person? It just kind of surprises me that we haven't had enough reform to make that more, how should I put it, legitimate, more satisfied for both parties one way or the other, so there isn't the question or the doubts about is there fraud or not.
Well, again, I didn't expect anybody to give me the result of who they voted for. That's not the whole idea. The question. But I guess my main question and thought process was everybody satisfied with the way the election is? And obviously, I don't have to say anything. The numbers bear themselves out. Right now, the final electoral college dictated that the election results are what they are. And the U.S. Supreme Court made a decision that, guess what? The former owner of the New Jersey Generals, okay, you're not it, okay? So I had to throw a USFL reference in there, Steve.
The New Jersey Generals, there you go. The guy who signed Doug Flutie.
Exactly, and Herschel Walker. I actually have to tell you, let's have a little bit of fun with this thing. I thought when President Trump was voted in that Herschel Walker was going to be on his cabinet, but that goes to show you that wasn't really too on target with that. But I really thought there was a chance that Herschel Walker could be there with Donald Trump. Oh, well.
Yeah, Herschel Walker is still very close to him, though.
Well, I believe that, of course. Why wouldn't he be? Paid him a boatload of money back then. So I imagine they're probably good friends. Who knows? Maybe there might be some spot of them golfing near Mar-a-Lago, or I'm sure that they probably have a few golf dates lined up after the President of the United States has a little extra time on his hands. You never know. I guarantee they won't be starting another football league together because they're all dropping like flies anyway. So
yeah. Well, come January 20th, I think he'll have plenty of free time to go golfing with them.
You think? I would say so. All right, so we'll go from the election to the frozen pond, and you wanted to talk about Alex Ovechkin, Mr. Balestrieri?
Yeah, I just think, in the shortened NHL season, Alex Ovechkin is probably the biggest goal scorer of his generation. And even in the shortened season, he scored 50 goals this year. He scored his 700th. I mean, he's getting up there. I think he has a chance to be in the top 3 or 4 this year. It's just, and you and I talk about Doc Emmerich all the time. And, if there was some good news with the way the season, was shortened, it was to see Ovechkin get his 700th goal. Hear Doc Emmerich one more time.
Mm-hmm.
See certain team hoist that Stanley Cup.
Yeah, well, Doc Emmerich, it's amazing. You talk about the bubble itself. Of course, we're talking about the NHL bubble being held up in Canada. Doc Emmerich got to call his last NHL Stanley Cup final from his home. And I think he realized how much he enjoyed being at home, that he had accomplished everything that he wants. So, you know what? It's time for him to sit back, enjoy his career, celebrated career. And again, I'll gloat all day long that for me to have a chance to meet him over at the NSMA and spent a lot of time with him back in 19, to me was arguably one of the biggest thrills I've had. And I've had a lot of them in 41 years in the business, but being around Doc Emmerich was pretty good. Of course, the other one that can fall along those lines back in 2019 was Bob Lee as well, but we'll keep the focus on Mike Emmerich. To be able to call a Stanley Cup final at home, I think he probably knew it was time to just enjoy things and ride into the sunset. I really do. I think it was pretty good that Ovechkin did what he did, and Doc Emmerich decided to go out on top in the only way that he could. And no question, the greatest American announcer ever. Although I got to put Dan Kelly into that discussion as well.
Dan Kelly, growing up with Dan Kelly on those Sunday afternoon game of the weeks, it was awesome. Yeah, I used to love those games.
Oh, I do too. Jim Gordon, Dan Kelly, this one's out of your league, Andy.
Yeah,
it is. I'll admit.
Yeah, we're dating ourselves here a little bit, but yeah, he did a great job on those Sunday game of the weeks, and that was, back then hockey, they didn't have all the cameras that they do now, and it was just kind of neat on those Sunday games because you'd have a lot more cameras, you'd have much better camera angles, the close-ups down on the ice, right. And I thought those guys did a great job on those.
Oh, they were fantastic. If you're an NHL fan, watching hockey in the 70s, watching the Montreal Canadiens against the Chicago Blackhawks, the United States against Canada, play for the prize-coveted cup, it doesn't get any better than that. I don't care whether the Bruins won it, the Red Wings, the Rangers, the Maple Leafs, United States, Canada, Dan Kelly, Jim Gordon calling it, but unbelievable. But this one belongs.
I remember Larry Robinson coming out of the locker room for the Montreal Canadiens and then just hammering Dave Schultz during the Stanley Cup Finals between the Canadiens and Philadelphia Flyers. That was just one of those other iconic moments,
That was a great time to be a hockey fan. But anyways, we don't want to lose Candy, so let's stay on point here. Okay. And talk about remote broadcasting, because you know what? We talked about Doc Emmerich doing remote broadcasting. So let's go ahead and segue to exactly that. We began to see remote broadcasting with NASCAR. Mike Joy, Jeff Gordon got to broadcast from different locations. But that would be just the beginning of things to come. Me working with the Miami Marlins, and we're going to get into Zoom later, but we're talking about the remote broadcasting. Let's talk about Korea Baseball Organization before MLB got going and all the different things that would proceed to follow. So I do know at some point announcers will be back on site. But Steve, what are your thoughts about remote broadcasting, at least knowing that we saw it in 2020?
Yeah, it's funny because, I've been still listening to my Patriots broadcasts, and even if they're on TV, I have my earbud in and I'm listening to the guys from the radio. And this year, unless they're at a home game, the radio guys for the Patriots have they've done all of their games at Gillette Stadium. They haven't gone to any away games this year. And it's amazing. I think the guys are doing a great job. I mean, it's a lot different for those guys doing it strictly off a TV monitor when they're used to watching the game unfold right in front of them. And I think you'd have to take your hats off to all of these guys And I think we're going to see more of it in the future. I really do. I think that in the future, because I think a lot of these teams have realized that they can do that with the keeping the guys at home station. You're going to see more of it because it saves them travel money.
Mm-hmm. Well, then it'll place a lot more emphasis on the PR people, making sure that these Zoom calls, and we're going into Zoom, so I don't want to get off base for a moment here, but there'll be a lot more video conferences instead of going inside the locker room to get what they need, but from a remote standpoint. Go ahead, Candy. I know you're anxious to get involved.
Well, what I was going to say is I think it gives us as viewers and fans a little different perspective, because they're actually, let's face it, a press box is not down on the 50-yard line, on the sideline. You have a bird's eye view. And so I think they can see and comment a little bit more on the action that's happening, because they're able to really see the video replays. You know, when they're doing a red flag, they're throwing a challenge flag. I think their commentary has been a little bit more, or can be a little bit more spot on, because they're seeing it easier, better. And they can view it and they can comment on it while we're watching it as a viewer.
Interesting perspective. But I'm with you, Steve. I think at some point or another, you're going to see a lot more. You'll see broadcasters go back on site. You began to see a little bit more of it with the glass separating the broadcasters anyways, you know, because you still want to make sure you get back a semblance of normalcy, although I don't think we'll ever see complete normalcy. And I want to make sure I preface what I'm saying, a semblance of normalcy versus what we had seen before. Again, we're talking a very experimental year, okay? Unprecedented times. That's what we're talking about. Where if you know, I don't know if you remember this, Steve, many years ago, but remember when NBC had the announcerless game at the Orange Bowl, where you had a guy, Brian Gumbel, I think, was at the Orange Bowl, and I believe the Miami Dolphins were playing. I don't know if they were against
the Jets.
Yeah, the Jets. I thought they tried that experiment way ahead of time. It was an absolute disaster because they were trying to rely on the public address announcer to give it to you. Wasn't the same, but Brian Gumbel was on the field. Even though you didn't see a lot of that this year, you still saw the sideline guy on the field, but just not the regular announcers there. So many, many years later.
Yeah, and, you know, I really think that, you know, we've gotten spoiled because we have a lot of really good TV, you know, coverage now. And, you know, when we were growing up, there might be just a couple of cameras out there. Now they have cameras at every angle and they catch everything. And I think the guys who announce now have a much better, easier job because they're able to see every little nuance that's out there. But at the same time, you know, with this remote stuff, I just have a feeling that it's going to happen more and more, that you're only going to see, for the most part, home announcers announcing games at home, and they're going to do them remotely from somewhere, you know, from the home stadium or in a studio covering the away games.
Well, I mean, you mentioned it earlier, Steve, about finances, the cost to send these guys back and forth. I never thought I would see the Michigan Wolverines having announcers back over at the Big House, but they're doing it all the time while everybody's on the road. And, of course, no better place like the Big House with over 100,000 people in the stands, empty. Lambeau Field's empty, but yet, regardless, you still had these guys broadcasting from those very spots as well.
Well, you talk about, and I know this isn't really remote broadcasting, but in a sense it was, what about the NFL draft and how that was done, and all the teams, owners, and the coaches were at home. Roger Goodell was in his basement.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what, though, Candy? I was reading something on that, Steve, too. You're going to see the NFL draft a lot more virtual, more so now than you ever will down the road. I could see that becoming a permanent trend. I really do. For some reason or another, Candy's really on to something with this. I could see the NFL draft becoming a virtual event. to a large extent.
I think that could very well happen. I know the NFL likes their events, and that was a big one for them. But I think in the foreseeable future, we're going to see more of that, and I think they'll figure out ways of making it more of an event, virtually. I just loved that when they showed Bill Belichick's dining room table, he was gone, and his husky was sitting in his chair. And everyone in Boston goes, no wonder why they can't draft a wide receiver. So
that's funny. That is pretty hilarious. Although, I know the NFL is going to want to eventually take it on site again down the road because there's just too much money to be lost, and the cities are obviously booking these in advance. But you can't do it for quite a while because, whether you have a vaccine or not within the next 6 to 12 months, then this thing is far from done, vaccine or no vaccine for sure. I don't even care. I mean, it's going to take a long time, a lot longer than most people think. Well, the way we're doing this broadcast, folks, it's my Zoom. And I never thought the only thing I knew about Zoom is what I used to do up and down the interstates where I have that thing called a lead foot. Well, guess what? Zoom is definitely here to stay, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And just like when you had a lead foot, that you can't outrun that radio. So the police officer gets on his Zoom call and, they have that state trooper waiting for you about 2 exits up. So
true.
And that's what we're doing now. This way we get to talk from across the state.
Right.
And, we can communicate that way. And I still do a podcast with a guy, up in Massachusetts and one in Connecticut. So
I never thought I'd like Zoom, but boy, I'll tell you, the more and more that I do it, the more I enjoy it. And Candy and I, we had a great time. One of the few lighthearted moments we had in Detroit was when we were going through the Zoom call with the rest of my family with my mother's funeral. It looked like the rest of my family, they almost looked somewhat clueless about the Zoom call. Maybe my youngest niece probably knew it and a few of the other ones, but we're old pros at it, right, Candy? Or a lot of them appear to be tentative. Well, hey, you always 5 or 10, a guy like me that really does hate technology, but I know how to do the Zoom thing, WebEx or whatever platform you're utilizing. But they look, go ahead, Candy.
I was going to say, there's been lots of Zoom birthdays, and my niece turned sweet 16, and we did a Zoom. Everybody had a dessert at home, and we lit a candle on it, and we sang to her via Zoom. So there's a lot of families that they're gathering, and they can't do it in person, so they're doing it next best thing, virtually, Zoom. A lot of businesses have used Zoom.
Well, my Zoom highlight of the year, and I'm not shy about this here, is the fact that I had a chance to work with the Miami Marlins, and they kind of helped break me in a little easier. That I had access to the manager and the players, and I got used to it pretty quick. And then, of course, networking meetings would subsequently follow, and a lot of other things that have really become a tool that I know I need. But I'm giving the Miami Marlins the gold medal for helping me, break that insecure barrier, making me comfortable with it. Now, the only part of those calls that were difficult were when they started taking those players from English to Spanish, and I didn't speak bilingual. Then I had a bit of a problem with that. But Zoom became my good friend here by the time the Miami Marlins got done with me. I really enjoyed it. It was certainly a nice change of pace, and now I feel like I'm pretty good at it. I really like it.
And you learned how to raise your hand to speak.
Well, that part was hard. That part was hard.
I bet you never had to do that in Detroit.
No, and I never realized how important the mute button was until I had it pressed on me a few times. How many times, and let alone at some of these networking meetings where at times I didn't realize that I had it on and I couldn't say anything and nobody could hear me until I found out it was too late. But let's keep it on the Marlins. The word raise your hand was like a foreign language to me, but I learned pretty quickly how quickly I could be muted. And, considering on a previous broadcast with a professor talking about esports, where I never heard the word cornhole 5 times in a given sentence talking about esports, what does that have to do with Zoom? It don't make a lick of difference. This is all foreign stuff to me, but it's interesting conversation. If you folks understood that, then you guys definitely deserve a gold medal for that. But no, Zoom is here to stay. I'm having a blast with it. And I'm finding myself that the more and more that we grow this platform, Steve, you know, when we do our broadcast and some of the streaming that we're going to be doing next year, that I'm really realizing how beneficial not only Zoom, but whether it's StreamYard or whatever, how important a lot of these things can be done and how efficiently that they can be done as well. I got to tell you, of all the changes that I'm going to really say positively about 2020, Zoom wasn't love at first sight, but it's going to be a long marriage with that one for sure. And I've really enjoyed being able to utilize this as well as I have, even if I've had to make an idiot out of myself from time to time doing it. You guys get that?
Absolutely. And we've all been there. We've all done that. So
all right, well,
that's part of playing with technology.
Well, I
We've
still
all
hate
had those.
technology, though. I still hate it. Doesn't mean I gotta like it, but I still have to deal with it.
I'm not saying it. I'm not disagreeing with you a bit, but yeah, there's been times when I thought I had myself on mute, and I was not, and you know, I got a red face afterwards because you know, you say some embarrassing things when you think you're on mute. So.
Well, you know, it's amazing. I wrote a story criticizing myself on mute is what I did because I didn't know what I was doing. It was good. And I'll bet Tom Brenneman and all those announcers wish they probably were on mute when they lost their careers because of that hot microphone too. And even though I didn't mention that in our pre-prep, how many announcers lost their job because they had a hot mic? Think about that one for a minute.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not getting into the over-under on that, but just imagine. But we all know the power of the mute button, but Zoom is definitely unbelievable. I got to tell you, if there's one good thing that came out of 2020, it's being able to take what we do, Steve, to a much higher level, meet people face-to-face. You know, whether we meet them face-to-face in person or not down the road, you never know. But having them on the video screen is a good consolation prize for sure. And that's what has me very excited about 2021.
Yeah, it's got to be better than 2020. So
I hope so. All right, well, let's keep it real and make you feel at home here. That I don't know if Tom Brady followed you down here or from New England, but I'll let you take the lead on Tom Brady, Mr. Balestrieri.
yeah, that was a big story this year. I mean, Tom Brady, after 20 years in New England, left the Patriots and came down here to the Bucs, and you know, it hasn't been totally smooth for him. But you know, we didn't expect it to be, especially early in the process. But you know, and he enticed Rob Gronkowski to come out of his 1-year retirement. I think that's a big story. I think, you know, for the NFL, him switching teams is a big thing, and you know, we'll see how far Tampa can go in the postseason. I still don't think they have their game completely together yet. I wasn't sure how it was going to work with Bruce Arians. I still don't think it's working because Brady comes from one school of thought in the NFL, and I think Bruce Arians is completely on the other.
Well, the only thing I'll say about Bruce Arians, and I mentioned this earlier in the week, was Tom Brady has 6 championship rings. I don't care about Bruce Arians' championship as an assistant, but the score is 6-0.
Oh, good idea. Yeah.
What else do I need to say about that? What do you want to add to that, Candy?
I think it doesn't surprise me because look at how many other people have done that. Look at how many people have changed, you know, their teams very late in their career. I mean, obviously I'm a Packer fan, so Brett Favre is top of mind, but Peyton Manning did it. You know, a lot of the big name players do it. I think Tom Brady.
But Peyton Manning won. You talk about Joe Montana, on the other hand, Steve. We know that just because you go ahead and leave one place doesn't mean you're going to duplicate success someplace else. Brett Favre, albeit I'll give you that one, that he went to the Jets for a year, and then he ended up going to Minnesota. It didn't quite work out so well, so I'm with you there, Candy. But Joe Montana went from San Francisco to Kansas City. Couldn't even wear the 6, so they had to turn it upside down and use the 9. But he didn't get the championship there. He got to a AFC championship game. But it doesn't always work out later, and I don't think the Tampa Bay Bucs are going to be hosting a Super Bowl in their backyard either.
I don't see it happening right now. I mean, stranger things have happened for sure, but I think their defense needs to play better, and And obviously, they need to get on the same sheet of music offensively, but I just don't think it's going to happen for them this year.
I think Bruce Arians needs to keep his mouth shut and quit throwing Tom Brady under the bus if he knows what's good for him. Especially if Josh McDaniels could be looming in the background of potential successor in Tampa. That's just what I'm throwing out there. You never know. I wouldn't put anything past it at that particular point. So whether or not Tom Brady and Bruce Arians can even play golf together, if I were Bruce Arians, I would do something that my father-in-law once suggested to me when it came to taking the 215 test where I couldn't keep my mouth shut and put duct tape on his mouth.
Well, I don't know if he's going to do that, but I think in this offseason, he just needs to play to his quarterback strengths, and he hasn't been doing that this year.
Yeah, and nobody's going to get that alibi. Well, we didn't have a preseason. And everybody was at the same situation. I'm not buying that. God, no way.
Well, the only guys who are going to new teams are rookies.
Right.
I think that did affect them because they didn't have that extra time. But it shouldn't have affected anybody, really, other than maybe the first week or two that have been, established on your same team.
Totally agree. All right, Candy, give me your thoughts on Tom Brady. Even though I mentioned Joe Montana, go ahead.
I was saying before, I think part of it is I think Brady wants to be the GOAT. He wants to be considered the greatest of all time. To be considered the greatest of all time, he had to kind of distance himself from Bill Belichick because everybody wondered, was it Bill Belichick or was it Brady that made the Patriots so good for so long? And so I think that's why I think he left part of it. And I think the story is yet to be written, whether he can claim that or not.
Well, Steve, you're from the area. Who ends up making out in this deal, Belichick or Brady, when it's all said?
Oh, that's been the talk of sports radio up in New England all year long. Every time, the Patriots would win and the Bucs would lose, and the guys would go up on their little scorecard. Oh, here's one for Bill, and minus one for Tom, and it's ridiculous. I mean, granted. I don't think either one of them would have had the success that they did without the other. But at the same time, just be thankful that,
Well, be thankful they're both going to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, ridiculous success that they had up there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They're going to the Hall of Fame. That's all. That's all there is. Yeah. They got championship rings. They have jewelry, a lot of it. All right, well, two words that were utilized a lot in 2020 were social justice. I didn't really like the way the NBA and a lot of these demonstrations were being taken place in terms of going out there and protesting games and boycotting games. I think that's crossing the line a little too far. Yet I understand the significance of social justice. I get it. I understand it. You need it. But you're not going to solve a 400-year problem overnight either. All right, Candy, take the lead on this one.
I think for us to be talking about it is a good thing. I think it's hard because all three of us are white, and no offense, we haven't had the same injustices that a lot of other people have had. It's hard for me to fathom. I mean, yes, I'm a woman, so it's a little different because, a cop pulls you over, you're going to flash that smile. Oh, it wasn't me. I swear I didn't know I was doing wrong. But not everybody has that opportunity because, when a cop approaches a car, they don't know what's inside that car. They don't know who necessarily what they might have. So I think it's good that we're starting to talk about these things, but I think we need to do more than just talk. And I think the platform that some of them used might not have been the right platform.
Right. What do you want to add, Steve?
Well, we had this conversation with some of the Patriots players a couple of years ago when, all the stuff was going on about the kneeling before this, came to a head this year. But, My feeling was, and it was quite unpopular with some of the readers of stuff that I wrote. Unless you've walked in other people's shoes, you shouldn't comment. I don't know what it's like to be an African American in a white city. I haven't experienced what he did, so I can't really comment on whether, he's right or wrong in the way he perceives the way the police treat them. So, when I look at it, if they perceive that there's a problem, then there is a problem and it needs to be addressed. And, until they feel otherwise, I think I think there's always room to be better. And I think for the most part, I'd say 99% of the police officers in this country are good, law-abiding people. But there is that 1%, and we hear about it all the time. We're hearing about it more and more. Those people need to be weeded out, and I think we haven't seen the end of this either.
No. Well, I mean, we saw instances in Atlanta, Louisville, Kenosha, Wisconsin, Minneapolis. Now I don't need to mention anymore. Those are the ones that got the most publicity. We all know the drill. There's a problem there. But again, we all realize Black Lives Matter is more than just a movement, but you just can't live off a movement. You have to do something about it instead of talk about it. So if all these guys want to go out there and talk about Black Lives Matter, go out and put your money where your mouth is and donate it to a position where they can make a difference. But you don't go out there and just demonstrate on the playing field. I don't believe that. And I'll tell you this, I'll say it again, what popular or no popularity, I do believe that you do stand for the national anthem no matter what. There are other ways to express yourself, but not that way. Don't believe it. I don't care. I mean, that's just social justice. I'm all for it. You're right, Steve Candy. I'm not African American. I've never stepped in their shoes. But I know that even if a white person were pulled over by a black officer, that the social justice could work the other way as well. A black officer might treat a white guy differently, and it goes both ways. Now, to the severity that it's in the other way, again, I'm not going to turn this into a lightning rod conversation because that's not where it's intended. I see both sides, but there's definitely room for improvement, that's for sure. And I have a strong belief in the Black Lives Matter. But it's one thing to have a movement, but the actions must speak louder than words. That's all we have to do in order to bring this country back to where it is. And folks, if you think that I'm a politician, no, I'll have something in common with John F. Kennedy. They'd shoot me, so leave it alone. Okay. All right. Well, once upon a time, I used to watch the movie Boy in the Plastic Bubble with John Travolta and Diana Hyland, but I never thought I'd ever see bubble sports via Disney World's Wide World of Sports Complex or up in Canada, Edmonton, Toronto. But we got a little bit of it in baseball with California hosting the American League and Texas hosting the National League came playoffs. So what are your thoughts, Candy, about bubble sports?
I think as much as some of the athletes or coaches didn't like some of that because they were away from their families for as long as they were, during this pandemic, if they wanted to continue, it was the best way that they thought they could do it. And I mean, yes, the NFL is making it work during the pandemic and they're not in a bubble, but we've also seen how many teams with outbreaks. We've had a team that couldn't field a quarterback because they had issues. There was a game that was supposed to be played on a Thursday night ended up playing the following Wednesday. So I give them credit for at least allowing them to finish the season. Was it the most ideal for everybody? Probably not, but it was what allowed them to finish that season. And so I give them kudos for doing it. Steve?
Yeah. I mean, when you're looking at the bubble, I think it not only encompasses the sports world, but it encompasses most everybody. I think a lot of people have been working and living in a bubble as well since then. And I know a lot of people realize that they don't like their children as much as they thought they did after being stuck at home with them. I'm just kidding, of course, but it wasn't just sports people. I mean, a lot of people have been forced to work at home, and again, I think it's going to change the way things are done in this country. I think people are going to realize that a lot of their employees can not only work but probably be more productive from home. They don't need all of everybody under one roof. So if there was one positive to come out of all this mess with the bubbles and stuff like that, I think that's one of them.
Right. Yeah, I think the NHL did a masterful job in Canada by executing their bubble. They really did. They did a great job. As much as I can become critical of the NBA, they did an outstanding job over at the Walt Disney World Wide World of Sports ESPN complex out there. I know I'm butchering the name, but I've been to that complex many times and have seen the two arenas. Those two bubbles were executed masterfully. Kudos to both leagues. They set major criteria and they carried it out as well as you can. No question about it. And baseball had to go through some growing pains with all their outbreaks for a while, but they learned on the fly and got the job done. And we were able to crown champions. Now, I'll go ahead and transition over what you were saying, Steve. Working remotely, yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm with you all the way. To me, we've learned a lot about ourselves that you can go ahead and be clocked in off of a computer to work. People can, Candy, you ought to know that people can go out there and monitor productivity remotely, right? And I think working remotely may indeed be a thing of not only the present, but the future as well. So I like the way we're able to correlate bubble sports with working remotely, because there's definitely an incredible connection between the two.
I believe there is. I mean, because I think, it's affected all of us. And sports were our big outlet. And, a lot of people were tired of being cooped up at home and, quarantining and staying social distance and all this. And, they wanted to see their sports. That's what that's our big pastimes. And that's our escape from the drudgery of a lot of our jobs. But I think this was one time where everyone kind of was on the same sheet of music.
Well, again, that leads us to the thing that we're not only on the same sheet of music, but we have a dismal economy, unfortunately, that all coincides when you put this whole picture together. It's going to take a long time to get this economy straight, and who knows when there's any end in sight for it, because we don't know the direction of this virus. So, Steve, when I give you the words dismal economy, what are the first things that come to your mind?
Yeah, small businesses. I mean, the mom and pop stores and the small restaurants and, delis and coffee shops. Those are the people that are suffering. I mean, I know a lot of the big companies are suffering as well, but, you look at it, I think Amazon is probably in the biggest boom right now, because everyone's shopping through Amazon. But, when I think of dismal economy, I think of the small businesses, the mom and pop grocery stores, the small restaurants and stuff like that. And those people there, I don't think any of, well, not any of them, but I think a lot of them will never recover from this.
Candy?
I think one of the things I think of is unemployment and all the people that are out of jobs. And we talk about, the small mom and pop stores, but a lot of your restaurants have, they're not at 100%, or even if they are at 100%, that doesn't mean that they're full to capacity, even if they can serve at 100%. We just came back from Michigan where they allowed no in-person seating. So what's happened to all those waitresses, all the bus boys, all the servers, the movie theaters people aren't going to, so you talk about the small, but you also have to talk about big like industries. How many people are flying right now? How many cruises? How many people are going on cruises? And we think of like the big company, but all the little people, the people that work, that make all that go, the people, like we said, in the stadiums, the ticket takers, the vendors, they use all of that as income, and typically, and I hate to say use it like this, but those are the lower income jobs. So those are the people that need the money, that are living paycheck to paycheck. And now what are they doing? So that's where I look at it. I mean, I'm very thankful. I'm very blessed. I have been working this whole time. I have not been laid off. I am an essential worker. And so I'm very grateful and thankful. But I also know in my industry, in the banking industry, there are lots of businesses, lots of banks, credit unions that are laying off people because it's not the same. We've changed to a more virtual. So I think, like Steve said, there are some companies like the Amazons that have really boomed. Whoever is working for Zoom, they're booming. Who's ever in the internet business, because all these people are working from home. So the overload on internet service providers, they're booming. So there are some industries that are really making, the people that are producing hand sanitizer and making masks, those industries that we never even thought, would exist, are now existing and growing. But then there are so many others that aren't. And I think a lot of the lower income people are the ones that are struggling, the ones that used to work paycheck to paycheck. And that's where I really feel for all of them.
Well, when you look at the dismal economy, let's face the reality. How many stimulus checks do you think are going to get from the government? Number one. Number two, okay, when you talk about stimulus checks, the unemployment runs out. Then what? Who's lending you money? Who's going to get kicked out of their house? What are you going to have? As if the homeless rate wasn't bad enough as it is, this will only make it even worse. So I take everything that you two and then add those to this equation, and you have a very, very bad situation without a doubt. So, the sum of the whole of the parts, is that how they usually call it? Pretty much. That's what you've got. Everybody being affected by it. And I don't think that there's a quick fix, even with the new administration that's set to come in about 30 days. They know they've got a lot of work ahead of them. We all know they've got a lot of work ahead of them. The question is how long can people hold out? Thankfully, one of the restaurants we went to up in Michigan that's doing carryout, they own their building, that restaurant. So they were fortunate. But there are a lot of them that aren't that fortunate, where they have expensive overhead. What are you going to do? I know of a family member that's in the business who thankfully is gracious enough to go ahead and pay his employees, but not every employer is like that. So for every good story that there's 5 bad ones that go with it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's try to end this broadcast on a positive note. I know recently Sarah Tucker is the first female kicker ever at Vanderbilt to finally set history. But here in South Florida, the Miami Marlins became the first professional franchise to hire a general manager, a female general manager, and I'm referring to Kim Ng. Derek Jeter worked with her, and she worked with the MLB baseball office. She's worked with the Dodgers, and I had the good fortune of asking Kim Ng a question during a Marlins Zoom call. Boy, how we go back to those lovely Zoom calls. I knew I had to steer this ship back to a Zoom call. But Kim Ng, to me, probably opened up, I shouldn't say probably, undoubtedly opened up a new array of hopes for a lot of young females, both girls and women alike, that indeed a woman can be in a high-profile position with a major league club. And I wouldn't be surprised to see at one point down the road that Becky Hammon becomes the first female head coach in the NBA. I don't think that's very far out either. Well, let's stay on point with Kim Ng, Steve.
I think it's fantastic. I mean, everything I've read about her, everyone talks about how smart she is and, how qualified she is. So if you're qualified, and she got blessed by Derek Jeter. I mean, Jeter knows his stuff. And if Jeter believes that she's ready for this general manager position, he's not going to give it to her if he doesn't think she's able to do it.
Right.
So I think it's a great thing. It's going to open up more avenues for women, and good for them. I mean, we're learning more and more that they can handle sports as coaches. Some of them, can even compete and against the men. So we saw that kicker. Eventually there'll be other kickers that, go to the college ranks. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see one or two trying out for the NFL really soon.
Yeah, like Dan Bailey with the Minnesota Vikings. If there's any female kickers that can kick a soccer ball that need a job, there might be one up in Minneapolis. Oh, you set me up there, Steve. Even though we haven't done a football broadcast in a while. Dan Bailey, watch out. Sarah Tucker might take your job. No reference to Robert Ephraim, which Candy and I know about that joke. Don't worry about that, Steve, but he used to be in Upper Orlando. Forget that. All right, Candy, what are your thoughts about Kim Ing?
I think I'm proud, to be honest with you, as a woman, to know that some of the doors are starting to open up, that they're recognizing that females, as much as typically sports has been a guy thing, that they're recognizing that there are some great minds, and it's all about hiring a great mind, whether it's female, male, Black, Latino, I mean, any of that. I mean, let's face it, we're going to have our first female as a vice president as well.
Right.
So we're breaking grounds, and I love it.
Well, I'll tell you, when we talk about 2020 in general, we talk about masking up, common sense, social distancing. Who would have thought about those words going into 2020? But that's where we're at with those words. Steve, you're nodding your head, and I know where you're going, but go ahead. Social.
Yeah, I mean, if you had told me all these things a year ago, I just thought you needed to be locked up. I mean, none of us saw this coming last year. I mean, and now they're part of our everyday routine, and I think they're going to be for quite a long time.
If you had told me at the start of this year that I was going to have to tell somebody that was walking into my bank, you need to put a mask on, I would have been like, are you crazy? I mean, we always tell people, oh, you got to take your hat, your sunglasses off. We need to be able to see you so the cameras can get a picture of you. And now you're required to wear a mask. You're not holding us up. You're not. Wait, what?
That's true. Yeah, mask.
Crazy. Never would have thought it.
Yeah, mask and banks aren't what you consider something that go hand in hand. That's for
No.
I know that's just too surreal, isn't it? Yeah, that's a great point, Candy.
Yeah, my son doesn't like the regular mask. He wears a bandana, and he prefers a Western hat. So we walked in the bank, and I was like, somebody's going to think you're Jesse James here. So.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't seem like that. Well, the word common sense is unfortunately a word that needs to be used a lot more in this society. And unfortunately, I don't see that happening anytime soon. I realize that 30 days from now, we're going to have or at least we'll be pretty close to a new president in a matter of 5 weeks' time. We're laying out the groundwork for that situation. But you've got to be proactive instead of reactive when you deal with certain circumstances. And I think that's the one thing that 2020 taught us a lot. Again, this is a loaded broadcast, folks. It really is. Then again, everything you've had to deal with all year has been loaded. Okay, it's not like some loaded baked potato over at Wendy's where you have the sour cream and chives and the onions. This is just loaded with the butter and the extra sour cream. But but you can put everything in perspective. So, Steve, if you had to summarize 2020 in a couple of words, how would you do it?
Nightmarish.
Andy?
This has been one nightmare of a year, and I'll be thankful to see the end of it.
Candy?
It's unprecedented. I mean, I know that word's been overused this year, but I think it really sums a lot of it up. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who normally on a New Year's Eve night, oh, I'm going to go to bed 8, 9, 10 o'clock. I don't wait up till midnight. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that say, no, we're waiting until midnight because we really want to see 2020 out and 2021 start.
Is that 2 words, Candy?
Well, it's probably more than 2 words, but I've taken lessons from you for years now, so.
And we talk about a baseball show. Maybe she's auditioning for 108 Stitches baseball talk. She just threw me a couple. But I'm going to use the wise words good riddance. Good riddance. But not to you guys. God bless.
Couldn't agree more.
With you two, it's God bless.
Right back at you.
All right. So with that said, by the way, folks, you're listening to No Limits. My name is Scott Morganroth, Motor City Badmouth. Pleased to be joined by Steve Balestrieri and Candy Ebling. We do this. We will be doing it once a week after the first of the year. I feel like, you know what, No Limits. I enjoy the chemistry that the three of us have. We're able to take you all over the planet. We can talk a little sports. We can talk about anything we darn want to, but we try to keep it real. We try to keep it real, keep things in perspective, and we try to do what we've got to do. Great broadcast tonight. We're certainly not going to summarize 2020 any more than we can since we have a certain amount of allotted time. I couldn't even be that long-winded, although I'm long-winded enough, okay? But with that said, okay, Candy, you want to let everybody know how they can get a hold of you and what you and the marvelous job you do for what we do here?
So most of what you can see is I'm on these broadcasts. We put them up on our website. Our website is www.southfloridatribune.com. We put them on our YouTube channel, South Florida Tribune. Please go like, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We put these up on Spreaker, which goes on for our podcast, which means you can get them anywhere you listen to your podcast, whether it be Apple, Google, any of those. I'm not a writer for the most part.
Although we might be at the end of the month.
Although you can find me on our website. I do have an article, and I will hopefully be writing one later this year yet. So stay tuned for that.
You know what, Steve? She took a lot of what I had to say. That'll make it easy for me at the end, so that's okay. But she's a representative of the company, so she can do that. So, all right, Steve, you do it, and I'll just fill in the blanks since she probably saved me from losing my voice on this broadcast. Although I don't see myself losing voice for a while. If I do, we're in trouble. Well, everybody else can talk. If I don't do it. One of these days, I'll go into another story about how I lost my voice and I made the other co-hosts pay for it, but I won't do it tonight because we have to try to keep on point. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, you can find me on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, Instagram. I write for a couple of different sites, one of them being the sports. I cover football, and I also cover military matters and national security stuff for another website. So, yeah, I'm always out there and, look forward to talking with somebody about whatever's on their mind on social media, because you always get a lot of different varying things out there. And this Wednesday night, juncture of ours is becoming one of my favorite things to do every week. So,
well, we love having you, Steve. You know what? I'm going to go over my social media because there's a method for my madness. But you know what? I have no choice but to tell this story about what happened one time I lost my voice, because I'm not like a soap opera, leave a cliffhanger. But once upon a time when I was doing a radio show out in Phoenix, okay, I was doing an auto racing show. And there was a time when I actually lost my voice on the air, and one of the co-hosts decided to take it upon herself, said, I got you where I want you. You lost your voice this time. You can't say anything. And you want to talk about sticking it to me on the air. By the way, I was only in the business at that time, just 20 years, okay? Well, you know what I did the following week? I came up with a nice trivia question for this show. I said, the winner of this trivia question gets to go ahead and go on a date with my beloved co-host, so-and-so. And when I'll tell you, when I came up with that, she lit up, that Sicilian blonde lit up like a red apple, that she'd make a red apple look like a real red apple. And you know what I told that woman? I said, just because I lost my voice one week doesn't mean you wouldn't coming back the following week. I guarantee you, she never ever took advantage of me losing my voice again because she learned the hard way. And I'm using the Massachusetts hard way without the R. Okay.
Yeah, that's
so,
right.
Didn't want to leave that one out there since I want to make sure that the suspense is no longer there.
Yeah, HAHD.
There you go. So, all right, in terms of following us on social media, on Twitter, you can do so at Tribune South. That's how I found Steve Balestrieri. He followed me. I followed him. We got phone numbers, and look what we got. I got myself a great co-host, great friend, etc. ... Okay, I get louder by the dots. Okay. Facebook and Instagram, South Florida Tribune gets it done. As Candy Ebling alluded to, yes, the YouTube channel, South Florida Tribune. If you subscribe, guess what? Okay, you get to watch all of us talk wherever we're at. Website, www.southfloridatribune.com. We have great content coming in from our media distribution partners, columnists, and of course, all of our broadcasts are on the southfloridatribune.com as well. You can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. LinkedIn, Scott Morganroth gets it done. And as Candy alluded to before, we have our broadcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. If I don't talk fast enough, I won't try to talk faster. You never get it right anyway, so it doesn't make any difference. But that's the audio version of the broadcast. I look forward to doing a lot of great things with this platform, if not more so improving it during the course of 2021, since we've learned a lot about 2020. So guys, guy and gal, okay, awesome broadcast tonight. Of course, it's like that auto racing. Gentlemen, start your engines. No! Gentlemen and women, start your engines. You know, that stuff, you know, it goes out both ways. But anyways, great broadcast tonight. Glad we were able to summarize 2020. Can't say you wanted to hear everything you really wanted to hear because I didn't think 2020 is that way anyways. But there are some positives out of it. And I can tell you, I'm looking at two of them right here tonight, and Steve and Candy as well. You guys are the greatest. I enjoy doing this as well with you, Steve. Our goal here is to make sure what we do better and make sure that we're as versatile as we need to be so that we can continue to try to improve on every single broadcast. So, Steve, if I don't have an opportunity to see you before Christmas, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas because I know that's coming up right away, like next week probably. And I'm looking forward, Candy and I are looking forward to seeing you and the missus out at Eddie Culver's out on the southwest part of Florida real soon so we can talk about what we have lined up for 2021. So, Candy Abilene, why don't you give the COVID message, please? Thank you.
Please, everybody, wash your hands, social distance, mask up. I know you want to be gathering with your families. Just do it smartly is all I'm going to ask. You just never know. So mask up and just be conscious of everybody else around you. It's not just about you. It's about everybody else as well. So just do the right thing.
Any closing thoughts, Steve?
Yeah, I just, to piggyback off what she just said, I mean, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, stay safe. Life's too short, so let's stick around and enjoy some.
Well, I like to use that analogy in cat terms, feline terms, okay? We have two cats in Bucky and Boot, so I'll leave you guys out this. I always say a mouthful anyway, so I'll do it again. Morris had 9 lives. We got to make the most of the one we have. How about that?
There you go.
There you go. So on behalf of Candy Ebling and Steve Balestrieri, my name is Scott Morgan, Rutherford Motor City Mad Mouth. Thank you for joining us tonight on this edition of No Limits. Until the next time, everybody, happy holidays, and we will catch you on the next episode. Good night, everybody. God bless. Be safe. Take care. Signing off.